why don't we introduce ourselves, and then maybe Tim, you could tell us what you know, I'm just interested in having a discussion and like hearing. I have a bunch of questions and ideas for a possible, video cast later, but this is just sort of maybe an initial discussion. But
Okay.
how about this? Well, I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Matthew, and I work at Biola University, which is a Christian college, private college in Southern California in Los Angeles County. About 6,000 students, graduate and undergraduate, all kinds of different majors and degrees. And Andy and Tim and I went there, and I work there in the distance learning department, but I also teach math there. And then on the side, I have a YouTube channel where I do pranks. And I didn't realize this, but Matt has seen some of my videos. So that's a bit about me. And I just posted one a couple of days ago because I do April Fool's jokes and stuff.
This is not an April Fool's joke, by the way.
No, it's not. No, I don't like that kind of joke. I like more, I don't know, more honest type stuff, I guess. It's hard to describe. Matt can describe it to you sometime. Matt, why don't you go next year?
Sure. Well, yeah, like I said, when Dave had sent me the invite for this, one of your recent videos had gone in front of my feed that day, and it reminded me of the one you had done in the classroom, which I had seen, which has millions of views, right? Close to 100 million, I think.
It's 97 million. I'm just waiting.
It's unbelievable. So congratulations on that. Awesome
Thanks.
video. And it's tough to get things that out there on YouTube. So I'm very impressed. And so about me, I went to the University of Oklahoma. I got a degree in construction science. I still work in the construction and development industries, and mostly a numbers guy. I analyze pricing and trends and things like that. So that's me. I got into flat earth back in 2015 through a number of ways. The big thing for me is the scriptures, what the Bible says, and I believe I take a lot of the scriptures literally as they're done, as they are interpreted in English, as well as some of the Hebrew behind it. And yeah, so I take a literal view of some of that stuff, and it's the Bible combined with some observational and, in my opinion, logic is what drives my flat earth beliefs. So that's what mine are grounded in there. And that's my summary. I've got 6 kids and currently in Mexico. This is a real backdrop. And I head back to Texas here in the next month. Yeah, Idaho, right. Yeah. So yeah, that's me. I like to travel, and flat earth was a big, it was just, I feel like it was something that God put on my heart for me to just obsess over and research for a long time. I felt like he hit me with the truth initially, as I see it. I feel like he kind of punched me in the gut with it. And then I spent a couple of years kind of making sure I wasn't crazy before I went public with it. I just wrote a book called The House That Jesus Built. And it talks about scripture. It talks about some experiments. It talks about kind of the nature of astronomy, how it's observational is exposed to more experimental, and then it talks about the reliability of the scriptures. I'm a big Bible buff, and I really believe that the Bible is a firsthand written account of all the events in it, and that we can trust it. So that's my passion there.
So Matt, I've read your book recently.
What? Yeah. Wow.
Yep. David, I know you're the star of the show, so we all maybe know you, but I'm not sure Andy has heard much about you. Maybe you could tell us a little bit.
I'm just a guy. I was, I live in Fairfield County on the East Coast. I, was the standard American person and worked in corporate America, and then started my own business with some partners, doing extremely well. And then flat earth hit me across the side of the head. And I tried to debunk it for the longest time and realized that, no, that's not going to happen. And then I got the calling to just say, one day somebody told me to walk away from everything that I've ever dreamed of and do this full time, because this message to me is the most important message of our time. With all the crazy and the stuff that's going on in the world, people are like, well, what difference does the shape of the earth matter? I still have to deal with all this chaos and insanity and go to work. And the answer is because if you don't know where you are, who you are, what you are, or the power of your mind, how are you ever going to maintain your freedom if we ever get it back again? So I dropped everything. I do this full time, talking to people like you guys and anybody else that is willing to have a conversation. And anybody that listens, once you see it, you can't unsee it, and everything changes. I believe that the truth of our world is the key to our real freedom, which was hijacked from us about 100 years ago.
Okay. I'll mention for the sake of the recording that we have a fifth person on here who will not introduce him or herself. Just that person prefers to listen in this case. So there's somebody else there. Oh, Dave, let me also make you co-host just in case. And then Tim, maybe you could introduce yourself and tell us why you came up with an idea for us to chat, and take it from there.
You're muted, Tim.
Tim, you're not.
So you might have to ask him. There you go.
Yeah, I got it. Sorry about that. How's my audio?
Good.
It's good.
I'm Tim Weiland. I also am a graduate from Biola University. I was in the same program as our friend, the unnamed man, who was actually a really great guy. I was 20 years as a public school teacher. One of my first jobs, I was teaching third graders. I actually had a solar system hanging. It was the most amazing thing. The sun was like one wall. And then I had Jupiter was the size of a beach ball, and amazing illustrations. I came to Flat Earth about 2.5 years ago. It was right after I basically denounced Christianity. I was no longer a Christian. I still believed in a God and a creator. But God said, I got something else for you in store. And now, Matt, like I share your beliefs. I mean, I was just sharing with a friend, the Bible has just become alive, and it never was before. It couldn't have been completely true, because look what it says in Genesis. It doesn't rectify itself with what we're taught in science. So that's how I'm here. I met Matt through our friend, and I'm an observer here. I think there's experts here. I'm very, very intensely interested in how this will go. Matt and I were talking, and just talking about being an evangelical Christian and Flat Earth community. We have something in common, in that we're viewed as anti-scientific. And I think that's just where I think defining science is an integral part in this whole discussion. So I'm privileged to be here. Dave, I watched you this morning. Awesome interview this morning.
Oh, with Hamish?
Yeah, that was neat. Intense. It was
he just turned the corner. We've been going at it. Not going at it. We contacted him a couple of years ago, and he just wouldn't look at it. And then finally, somebody put something in front of him. He called me up and said, let's do it. And so he just tipped in the last couple of days.
No, it's fabulous. It's fabulous.
Yeah. Thanks.
Good to see you, Tim.
Who is this guy, Hamish, that you're talking about?
It's this guy, the surfer guy that does this morning coffee talk. He just goes there. He's really, fast-thinking, well-spoken guy, just talking about, the issues in the world, and just a good. The best way to describe him is a surfer dude. Father, he's got a little kid, and he decided, he heard about Flat Earth, and he kind of laughed at it 2 years ago, and then he finally looked, and now he talked to me, and his mind has opened, and now he sees. Here's the thing that people have to realize is flat earthers don't know everything. We know that we don't know. It's the ballers that think they know everything, and they don't know anything, right? When I first heard about flat earth, I'm like, there's a million proofs of the globe, and there's zero of the flat earth. Well, the opposite is true. Everything is inverted. That's a satanic thing where they invert everything. everything they tell us. You know, the globe has a molten magnetic core. Well, if you know anything about magnets, when you heat them up to the Curie point, they lose their magnetism long before they melt. Well, how can you have a molten magnetic core, right? Everything they tell us is inverted. And I think that's part of Satanism. Is that the right word?
That could be, yeah.
I think of a, I mean, if I could say something, I think of a continuum. So well, I'm a linguist, and I'll say I'm in West Africa, and I'm a linguist. So we do language development and translation. I won't say more than that, but there's I think of it as there's kind of a continuum of correct, I when you say, David, that there's nothing's right or everything, I guess I would tend to say there may be some things right here and some things right there, and the question is, okay, how do we discern and how do we decide what the right
I don't mean everything's inverted, just they invert everything that they can. If you look at, as we'll go through, you'll see the more you look at the ball, you just realize, like, did you know in the North, right? We live in North America, that during our summer in the heliocentric model, we're 3.5 million miles farther from the sun than we are in our winter.
Yeah, and the farthest point is somewhere in July.
Yeah, and they tell us it's the little, here's the sun, the little tilt of the Earth makes us have winter, and the tilt makes us have summer. Okay, well, that makes no sense with the spin, because the spin is also tilt, right? So in the summer, at sunrise, you could feel the heat on your face immediately when the sun is at the most severe angle, right? The sun rays are skimming across the Earth. So it should be freezing cold according to the heliocentric model. And then in the winter, in December, when the sun is at its highest point during the day, when we're having fairly, much more direct sun rays, you look at the sun, you can't even feel it on your face. Okay? That completely disproves the seasons model, proves the globe, it proves the flat Earth, and disproves the globe. End of story.
So yeah, let me talk about maybe what I think I see as commonalities, because just hearing from what you say, I could see that that I think all of us would agree that there's a fight between the truth and deception, between God and his righteousness and truth, and Satan, who is trying to twist everything, and that studying the world is a way to get to the truth. We come to different conclusions maybe, but yeah, so I'm really fascinated, because I see, like evangelical Christianity, I think the flat earth movement seems to face a lot of external pressure in the form of like ridicule, suppression, opposition, all that kind of stuff. And so what do you guys see as some of the good strategy for I don't know, dealing with those external pressures, or how do we confront those things we have in common, like the disbelief in God, disbelief in scripture, those kinds of things?
Well, my opinion is similar to when you're sharing the gospel or something. It always makes for a tougher conversation when there's no commonality, right? And I think first showing people, and now in regards to flat earth, showing people that, look, there's a lot of commonality between the flat earth model and the globe model, at least experientially. Like, we are all going to sit around here and experience a flat, non-rotating earth in our lives. Like, I look out, I see a flat horizon, I don't feel the spin. So I think getting people to understand that some of these more complex things that they think can only be explained by life on a globe also have very good explanations on a flat earth. And by the way, that's what they are. They're explanations. You did a great video on the moon, and you make mention in there that there's evidence, and then there's explanations of evidence, and you have to decide which explanation you're going to adopt. And that's the same thing with the Bible. Like, you can go out and find some terrible articles on the Bible. why it's not true, why it's been adjusted over the years. And these people are going to write those things like it's the God's honest truth, right? But you have to kind of take all that in. Same with the flat earth. You take all these things in, and I think showing someone that, hey, it's really kind of a journey. Like, you don't have to look at what I'm showing you right now and automatically be a flat earther, but it does say something about your character if you automatically won't accept it because you think it sounds stupid. So I think it's very similar, just like you said, the flat earth walk, the Christian walk. I think they're tied, especially as we appear to be getting closer and closer to the last days where our freedoms are being crunched in. And it is, I don't know how important flat earth is as we approach these last days. It may be important depending on what deceptions they throw at us. But I'd say the fact that I believed in a flat earth and didn't believe the mainstream narrative there certainly helped me with what's happening now with COVID and loss of freedoms and things like that. So that's my take on it.
So
let me just comment on that. The how important flat earth is. I agree with everything Matt said, but the reason that flat earth is so important for somebody like me, before I discovered flat earth, I was, I guess, best described as an atheist. I didn't believe in any creator or anything. But once you see what the earth isn't, and that's a spinning ball flying through a heliocentric space vacuum, and you realize that it's created, you have no choice but to not deny a creator. And then it's everyone else's personal journey where you're going to take that. Who's the creator? What is my role and everything. But when you understand that the earth is a design created place and we're at the center of creation, that makes the denying the creator impossible. And they don't want that. That's why this is the biggest secret. There's plenty of people like yourselves who all know the creator, and you're on your journey, but there's a majority of the world that is confused, doesn't know, and can deny it. And that's what they want to keep it. So that's why this is the most important topic of our time for those that don't see the creator yet, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say the same thing about the intelligent design movement. To me, the specifics of different scientific theories change over time. And they say, if theology marries science today, then theology will be a widow tomorrow, right? But the idea of intelligent design, distinguishing between the design and complexity of the world versus the methodological naturalism, which is the philosophical idea behind naturalistic evolution, that is a more succinct way to kind of like draw people to God. And once they see the complexity of the world through whatever science or through whatever reason or whatever observations, once they see that complexity in design, that will hopefully draw them to God. Of course, in my belief, it's all down to the Holy Spirit draws each person individually and convicts them of sin, and they need to be drawn to God. And by the way, yeah, Matt, you mentioned my video about the moon. I was careful not to talk about evidence and not talk about proof because I'm a mathematician. I think proof belongs in the realm of mathematics and logic. I mean, I know the proof that there's an infinite number of prime numbers, for example, and it's just logic using the words, and that's what proof is. And I would say things having to do with science or observations, I would say evidence for this idea, or observations that go against that idea, or that's the language I would use.
Yeah, I think it's very hard. Like you make mention, it is very difficult to come up with an ultimate proof of this or that, where well, especially in this space, but in any space, I think. And like Dave said, it's a journey, and like you said, I do believe the Holy Spirit talks to people in different ways. I think different people need different things on their walk. 10 years ago, I would have looked at the universe and said, man, God is awesome. He created all this. I still look at that same creation and say, God is awesome. He created all this. I just think it's something different at this point. And I do think it was the Holy Spirit that punched me in the chest when I accidentally watched a flat earth video the first time. And then, the logical side of me, the side that grew up knowing that the earth was a spinning ball, then took over and tried to, kind of, whoa, I feel like God said this, but there's no way he said that, because it can't be. And then that's when, like Dave said, went on my journey and ended up, and I needed flat earth. I ended up meeting my wife, and there's 2 new babies in the world because of it. So
and your podcast co-host.
Yeah, and my podcast co-host down there. So it's been an amazing journey for me. It's been, if it's a lie, it's the greatest lie I've ever followed in my entire life. So no regrets.
Following up on what Matthew was saying, intelligent design, my last job as a teacher in California, I was tasked to teach 8th graders Darwinism and evolution, which I've always it's just nonsense. I still believed in a globe, but I taught the inverse of Darwinism and evolution. I used a lot of Stephen Meyer's work, and just taught. I think intelligent design, the fingerprint of God is in our DNA. Yet I was still, the thought of, the thought of us not being on a spinning ball was crazy to me.
He just came out with a new book, by the way, The Return of the God Hypothesis.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I saw that he was talking about that.
Yeah. Well, so I have a question. Just in general, it seems to me like one of the key ideas of the flat earth movement is sort of skepticism in general, like not replacing an idea, not replacing the globe idea with a specific model, but more skepticism against something. So I guess my general question would be, how do you decide what kinds of things to believe? What's your general strategy for deciding what truths to believe? Is it sort of a radically skeptic idea towards science, or are there some trustworthy authorities or sources that you can believe?
So Matthew, are you saying it's a theory to not believe this or that, or it's primarily, we definitely don't believe in the globe? And is that what you're saying?
Primarily defined as what we're against, not what we're for, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a question to any of us?
Yeah.
So belief is the enemy of knowing. The problem that we have is we all believe we live on a globe, but nobody knows it. We were told it and we believe it because we're trusting it, because we were taught by our kindergarten teachers, that were gods to us at the time. And we believe it because everyone else believes it. So, consensus is not science. The high priests of scientism, Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, the line guy with the bow tie, they tell us things and we just believe them, right? Because we're trusting. But there's no science behind the globe. There's none. There's the word science. Science proves the globe. Well, what science? Lots of science. Well, all of the people that figured it out. Who? What people? What did they figure out? How did they figure out how far the sun was? It's the most ridiculous story ever. And people just believe. So when you ask, how do we choose? Well, we do the science ourselves. The thing that got me is I saw all of these long distance sightings. People were showing things that should be behind the curve. So I checked the math out. I bought a $1,000 camera and tripod, and I went down and zoomed in on things that should be 60, 100, 200 feet below the curve. And there they are. I can see them. They weren't mirages. They were right there. And then I learned about the angular resolution limits of my eyes, which they never taught me in school. And I learned about the inverse square law of light, which they never taught me in school. And all of these things scientifically prove that the numbers and the things that they tell us about our world are scientifically provably impossible. But no one ever takes the time to do that. Well, I'm sure Tim knows the answer to this, and Matt, because I say it in all my interviews. Matthew, I don't know how many of my interviews you watched. Do you know how long 1 trillion seconds is?
I forgot. It's a long time though.
If you guess it within a week, and I'll give you $100.
Oh gosh. 400 years?
Very close. Very close. Wait.
10,000
What's your question, Tim? What's your answer?
10,000 years?
Yeah, very close. 31,000 years. Okay. 31,000 years is 1 trillion seconds. Okay. That's just to show you how big the number is. The closest star to us.
Perspective on our national debt.
Yeah. Think about that. Yeah.
And the big loans right now.
Yeah. The closest star to us is 25 trillion miles away. Scientifically, provably, we cannot see that. Think about this. This one usually gets people. So our sun is the big yoga ball and the earth is a marble, right? That's what they tell us. So if the sun was a mile over our head, it would fill the entire sky, right? You move the sun, 93 million miles away. By perspective, it shrinks, and it's the size of a coin held at arm's length. Okay. If you doubled the distance, doubled it, scientifically provably, angular size would be too small. But I say, let's just be safe. Let's make it 8 times farther. Any logical mind knows that you can't see it. It's too small because your eyes just can't resolve something that small. That's a light hour. Okay. 8 times the distance of the sun is a light hour. The next star is 40,000 times farther than that. These are impossible, nonsensical nonsense. Nonsensical nonsense. I like that. I'm going to use that. They're nonsensical nonsense.
So, to Dave, are you done? Because
yeah. Go ahead.
I think let's say you were doing a Bible study and you wanted to do one on the rapture, or you wanted to do one on predestination or the Trinity. You wouldn't take just one verse out of context. You would look at a lot of things, and that's what flat earthers have done with the globe. One of the ways you become a flat earther, right, is by looking into the globe and checking these things out. And I would say when you get together at a flat earth conference, you've got a lot of people that don't believe in the globe, and that brings them all together. They're not all Christians. They're not all there are different models of the flat earth. I would say that that they don't all subscribe to, but they all have a commonality that they don't believe in the globe. And so it could be looked at as a movement of not believing in something. That could be it. Or just like if you had a community of people that don't believe it went to the moon, that's kind of a movement of people not believing in something, or believing that the moon landing was fake. As far as there is a lot of things that flat earthers don't believe in, because they see a similar fingerprint as they do with the flat earth, where certain things get censored on YouTube, or it's hard to come up with thoughts now, but I would say in general we are skeptical by nature with a lot of stuff. But I'll give you an example. A lot of truthers or flat earthers think that all presidents are selected, not elected. Well, I still had a little bit of hope that Donald Trump is this outsider that truly loves the country, and I believe that my vote actually counted in Texas. Now, there was probably some voter fraud. In fact, I believe there was a lot of voter fraud, but I do believe in that enough to go still out and participate in that system. There are some others that don't. In fact, there's a lot of others that don't. But I would say in general, if there's something that I haven't looked into, I'd probably be skeptical at. But I think when we look at things, we look at the evidence and evaluate it ourselves. That's how we come up with our own opinion about something, just like we have an opinion or a thought on flat earth. But Dave, did you have more?
The last thing I wanted to add is the shape of the earth doesn't matter. It's the lie that matters, and it's hiding the God's creation, or the creators, whatever you want to say, their creation. And I think that's what matters most.
Yeah. So you guys have brought up several specific evidences and things. First, I'll say that Matt mentioned scientism, and yeah, I'm anti-scientism too. Scientism is the belief that science is the ultimate truth, and that ends up looking like a lot of scientists acting as philosophers, as honestly rather amateur philosophers when they talk about, you know, the beginnings and origins and all that kind of stuff. So I also am anti-scientism. I think philosophy is higher than science. I'd be happy to talk about some specific evidences, because you guys mentioned a couple things, and I didn't bring it up, but I do think that in my mind, I have explanations that work for me for each of those things, the trillions of miles and the angular size of the sun and that type of stuff.
Matthew, are you able
yeah.
to reach that globe that's right behind you?
Yes.
Can you grab it and tell me if there's a sticker on the bottom of it?
I know what there is.
Made in China.
Well, besides the made in China one.
This is a Replo globe, which is made for classrooms.
Right.
And so the ones that you're thinking about are the decorative ones they sell at Walmart for cheap.
Yeah.
That usually say this is not for educational use, but on the website for this one, it says perfect for classroom use.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that existed. That's an interesting looking globe. I got to check into that.
Yeah.
I was curious if it had this sticker on it. That's all.
Yeah.
Matthew, what was the name of the globe again?
Let's see. I'm going to post it in the chat because somebody else asked about this once. Okay.
Right.
REPLOGLE.
Yep.
It's a standard brand. That's probably what you had in your classroom once upon a time.
The ironic thing is, as a teacher, if I was given a new classroom and I had to change, I laugh now, but the first thing I would ask for, I'd call the office and say, I need a globe.
Wow.
I mean, you know, it's, and I hear Dave, you talking about that a lot when you do your reviews, and it's programming.
It's part of the curriculum. I mean, the first worksheets that kids take home are the orbits of the planets and the sun and the moon. And I'm watching these little kids working this stuff out. I'm like, this is indoctrination from the lowest level. And then the second thing they teach them is dinosaurs, and that asteroids took the dinosaurs out. What does that do to a little kid's psyche? An asteroid could take me out at any moment. So their whole foundation is built on lies and fear.
In my early education, I don't remember that being as emphasized. I don't know what it's like now because I'm not around elementary school.
That's what it's like now.
Kids. But yeah, that's what it's like now.
Matt, are you still there?
I think he had to mute himself and do something else, but
okay,
maybe listening. I don't know. I see that he.
All right, he'll come.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm just wife was texting me about something that I needed to address real quick.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
6 kids will do that.
Well, okay. So here's an analogy. What if there were a group of people that said, "Hey, I don't think that cell phones. I think that cell phones don't actually use radio waves. I'm a radio wave skeptic." And I would say, "Oh, well, I mean, what is it using? Because I can pick up my phone and call my mother." And what if they said, "Well, I don't have a theory, but for what's replacing it, I just know that I've never seen a radio wave." How would I argue with that? Since you can't sense radio waves, and of course the analogy.
You can. I mean, with equipment, you can sense radio waves, and if it's not using radio waves, you have to come up with something else that you could prove. So there again, people say, "Hey, Dave, what is the moon?" Well, I can't prove what the moon is. I can prove what it's not. I can prove that an eclipse, a lunar eclipse, has nothing to do with the Earth, but I can't tell you what's causing the eclipse.
See, and that's hard to argue against, because typically when people change their minds, they have one idea and then they move to something that is a better explanation. But if we're just finding evidence against one idea, then it's hard to know where to go.
Right. Well, there are some things we can, like the earth is not a ball, it's flat. Now, what's underneath the earth? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what's underneath the ball or the flat earth. They can only get down, less than 8 miles. So the fact that we don't know doesn't mean that, it's not different, but we can prove that we don't live in a space vacuum. Think about this, the Big Bang, right? The Big Bang, nothing exploded, created everything. Then you had all the dirt and rocks that coalesced by magic of gravity into these big rocky balls, and all of the gases coalesced into even bigger balls, right? How come the gases didn't pull in the rocks or whatever, and then they left a vacuum in between? How do you have a gas ball in a vacuum on fire? Okay, this defies every piece of logic and science and physics available, and none of that makes any sense. But when you look at what this earth is, there's a lot of things that make a lot more sense.
I hear what you're saying, and I believe you that it doesn't make sense to you. I do think it might make sense to some people. Like they have in their minds, it all matches. And again, I might use the analogy of if somebody were to tell me, how in the world could you talk to your mother through your cell phone with these invisible radio waves that aren't there? And you tell me you have to use these magical equipment to sense them, but I've never seen them. Do you hear why
I hear what you're saying. I'm just saying, show me an experiment where you can have a gas ball without a container in a vacuum.
Yeah, so the pressure gradient would be my answer, but
yeah. The pressure gradient can be completely disproved, because at any altitude, I can take a straw, point it down, and with the weak vacuum of my mouth and lungs, I can inhale and suck air and water up and away from gravity. So how come the vacuum of space, which is a little bit stronger than my lungs, isn't able to rip the air off of the earth?
So
do we want to focus more on the discussion of how could you prove or disprove it, rather than the specifics on the question of this pressure vacuum? Or would that be more helpful for this kind of dialogue? Matthew Weathers, I guess we go by Matt and Matthew.
Sure. Yeah, that's sort of stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. How would we adjudicate between my idea of how pressure would work and the flat earth idea of how pressure always needs a container? How would you determine which is true, I guess?
Well, we can do experiments showing, how if you have a container with no pressure in it and you open it up, that the pressure in the room will equalize into the container. We can't ever do an experiment where we have a pressure gradient and a vacuum and we open up that vacuum and it doesn't equalize.
And I think that's a tough part of a lot of the things that we talk about, where, like I mentioned earlier, astronomy being largely observational, where you create a theory and then the theory rules until it's disproven, basically. And when I took physics in college, when you do those word problems, a lot of them start out with in a frictionless vacuum, and then it tells you what to solve, right? And the unfortunate thing is we can't create that here where we are. And so you almost, like a flat earther would translate that, okay, starting in a place where we can't go and can't experience, now work this problem. And I know as you get into more advanced physics, you can deal with things like friction and things like that. But still, it's an interesting kind of monologue into a lot of the assumptions we have to make in order to allow these theories to be true, or true, whatever that is.
And you done?
Sure.
So, and what scientism does is they can make an equation. Okay, in a frictionless vacuum, there's no friction, so we give a value of whatever, and then we have momentum and mass, and you can make an equation for anything, and then the equation is actually a sound equation, but it's based on nonsense. It's based on fictional situations. You know, I can do an equation for Matt. Matt has $1 million in the bank, and right now I'm going to double it every day for 3 days. So tomorrow he has 2 million, next day you have 8 million, the next day you have 16 million. Therefore, Matt has $16 million in the bank. Problem with that is I made up the first part.
You got me excited.
I know. Sorry.
Must be investing in Bitcoin or something.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Yeah. So I agree that just making up equations doesn't necessarily mean it's true.
The
But
math
with these
is
physics, but the physics things, they can build iPhones and jet planes and buildings.
real. That's
using
good
those-
science. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
science, and that's real stuff that you can verify. Unlike everything in space is unverifiable.
I see what you're saying.
And then the people that tell us everything about space, they're proven liars. So when you prove somebody lying once, that's enough. But when you prove it 50 times or 500 times or 5,000 times, that's more than enough.
Yeah, I think as Dave mentions, one of the big things for me, you know, we talk about the International Space Station. This is getting a little bit more specific, but it addresses kind of the general point of we've found so many times where they've had green screen issues or CGI issues or things that look a lot like harnesses or quote unquote gravity pockets where it looks like they're filming on the Vomit Comet and then, you know, it comes down. It's just stuff that I think if they were being straight up, just hardly any of that would happen. And I think, you know, looking at the images of Earth and the images of all space, by the way, you know, looking at, if you read my book, you know, the difference between an image and a photo and how it's really hard to find things on NASA's site that are classified as photos and not images. And so you add all that up, you know, one of it by itself it could be an anomaly, and that's what we've done is we've added up all of these things, and it's brought us to a point where, okay, we believe we've disproven the globe. Where are we going to go from here? Addressing your other point, and so because we believe we live on a flat, non-rotating Earth, and NASA is lying, the next logical place to go for us would be the flat Earth model. And I think because so many cultures believed it in the past, it's a model to easily step to. And obviously I believe that those cultures had fully functioning models prior to being told they were on a spinning ball flying through space. So I think it's a logical place to go. Now we're not fully funded science departments and things like that. So I think a lot of our stuff is speculation, but you know, me with 6 kids sitting here in Mexico, I'm not really super passionate about going out and raising money and proving this deal. I believe it's a truth that's been given to me, and I have a better experience on Earth because of it. But and I think I'm protected from things that are going to be shown to me in the future because of my current beliefs. And so I don't know. It's an issue of what is proof to you, right? And so the collection of stuff that Dave and I have looked at to us has been proof that without a doubt, we're not a spinning ball flying through space. And we think we have proofs of the flat Earth as well. So how do you, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. How do you what?
Well, I was just going to say, you know, when an evolutionist looks at a fossil and a creationist looks at the fossil, they see 2 different stories. So we and Globers are going to look at the Earth and see 2 different stories. And we're both going to be really sure we're right because we both have a lot of information and articles on both sides saying why that piece of evidence is proof of a 6,000 year Earth or proof of a 6 billion year Earth. So I think it's tough. I think the nature of the time in which we live makes it really hard to have that conversation of, okay, two sides think they're right. You got Democrats and Republicans. Somebody's lying, right? You know, how do you get them on the same page? I don't even know if you can in this day and age. So it's tough.
Yeah. Well, yeah, first of all, lying is a strong word. I would say some people are deceived or just have different ideas. Lying implies intentional deception. And there is plenty of that going on for sure.
Fine. Fine.
You mentioned other cultures believing in a flat earth, but my impression was that all the ancient cultures believed in a flat earth where, especially near the equator, you see the sun go straight up and go overhead and go straight down. And then they believed it went under the earth and then came up on the other side. And it wasn't until time zones were a proven reality that modern flat earthers had to come up with this idea that the sun circles the North Pole instead. So I wouldn't say that the modern flat earth model is anything like what the ancient cultures believed.
So Matthew, just a personal experience. When I was younger, I took my bicycle up to Alaska and I rode it to the Arctic Ocean, and actually the sun does do circles around the North Pole. So that's just from firsthand experience.
What would you say to people who claim that the sun does circles in the southern hemisphere if you go far south enough, but it goes the other direction?
The answer to that is
ride my bicycle down there. I think there's laws which keep me from doing that. But I would ask for video evidence, and I've seen about 3 different ones, and they've been proven to be falsified.
Yep.
So that makes me right away question why. It'd be simple. I know I could have done it, and this is back before digital cameras, but I could have proven that the sun was going. I mean, I saw it with my own 2 eyes. So you can't tell me it didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So I would need verifiable evidence, and I have not yet seen that. I'd love to see it.
Because you can go to Tierra del Fuego. It doesn't stay above the horizon, but on December 21st or something, way at the bottom of South America, it does go that opposite direction, but it does dip below the horizon for a couple hours.
Yeah, I think Dave, you should take this one. Dave has done some, as far as the firmament goes and the way light plays, there are anomalies. I agree with you 100%. I mean, that's provable. I've talked to people down there who, the twilight, the sun being in the sky is not been shown.
Let me address it. So the optics of the sky with a dome and possibly liquid in the sky. So all bets are off the table on what direction things are going. Okay. So what we're seeing in the sky, the other thing is people don't realize if you're, looking at the North Star, the stars are rotating from your right shoulder to your left shoulder. If you put your back to the North Star, then now they're rotating from your left shoulder to your right shoulder. Did they change directions, or are you just looking a different way? People don't realize that, in the South, you're facing in a different direction. When you're looking towards the equator, if I'm looking at the equator now, the stars are coming from one shoulder to the other. And if I'm on the south looking at the equator, they're going in the opposite direction, right? It's not because I'm on a ball, it's because I'm on a flat plane.
But it's clockwise versus anti-clockwise.
Well, it depends on which direction you're facing. So here's the thing: it's the Arctic versus the Antarctic, and the words are telling you. So here's the Arctic Circle. So if I'm standing right here in the Arctic Circle and I'm watching the sun, what's it doing? It's arcing around me, right? It's arcing around me.
Yeah,
I'm out here
right.
in no, forget the direction. It's arcing around me. It's arcing over me, right? It's arcing around me. If I'm here in the Antarctic, look what it's doing. It's antarcing away from me. It's not arcing around me. It's antarcing. I'm on the outside of the arc. Here, I'm on the inside of the arc. It's arcing around me in the Arctic, and it's antarcing in the Antarctic. See, it's antarcing away. It all depends on where you are. The answers are right there in the words.
So there's some kind of optical effects going on that distort what we're seeing at different latitudes in certain ways.
Right here. Let me. Can you activate screen sharing? I want
oh,
to
sorry. Yeah.
Oh no, it's active. It's active. Sorry. You're all good. So you guys can see my app here.
Yeah.
So this is the Flat Earth Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. I'm going to pull up in the frequently asked questions. Where is it? Southern rotation. Where is it?
So the third one in the second column. I mean, sorry, third
There it
column,
is. Look at
second
you.
row.
Look at you. But you're. So if I can find the video real quick, where is it? There's a video where we show the star trails. Maybe this is it. Let me just see real quick. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Well, this is actually a different video, but we're spinning stars around looking through a dome, and it makes the same reverse spinning trails that we see. But this is not. I wanted to show you the light one.
So you have like a
This
hemisphere of glass or something?
Yeah, hemispherical glass, and we put it on a circle of stars, and when we move them, they actually spin in opposite directions. And then this is comparing, real world observations to what we're seeing in the dome. But that isn't the video I wanted to show you. So I wanted to show you the one with the light. Well, basically, it shows the light patterns according to time and date on the Earth versus looking through a dome where we're projecting a light into the dome, and it makes the exact same light patterns. And it shows you in the deep south, when you bring the light toward the edge of the dome, that the light wraps around. Daylight and sunlight are two different things. So in Santiago in December, you'll have these really long 17-hour days. But in Antarctica, you don't. It's because the light wraps differently. And it has to do with it on the dome. And here's the thing: we can't prove it, but we can model it, and it matches reality, right? The globe has no explanation for what we're seeing.
The explanation on the globe makes sense to me, but
well, the explanation on the globe, you would have at the same degrees north, whatever latitude northern Alaska is, the same southern latitude 6 months later, you should have the same observations. You don't. There's no 24-hour sun that you see that you see circling around. You also should have the same plant and animal life, which they don't, because at 65 degrees, whatever the number is, north, there's all sorts of animals and plants and people, and at that same degree south, there's nothing. There's not enough plant. There's no plants. There's nothing. There's a couple penguins and a lot of ice. So none of that makes any sense on the globe. Why is Antarctica the coldest place on Earth when during its summer it's closer to the sun than the Arctic is? It's in Antarctica summer, it's still the coldest place on Earth, right? It's 3.5 million miles closer to the sun. It should be getting the same amount of sun that the Arctic gets 6 months earlier or later, and it's not. It doesn't. It's because the sun is not circling like it does, over Antarctica, over the Arctic. I mean.
Yeah, my answer would be that the amount of radiation you get from the sun depends less on the distance to the sun than the angle to the sun.
Well, that doesn't make any sense because the angle would be the same.
Yeah.
If the Earth is a globe, 65 degrees north would have the same weather as 65 degrees south 6 months later. But in the south, it should actually be warmer during their summer, because they're closer to the sun. So, but if it's not if you want to ignore the distance, fine. We'll just take that out of the equation. It should be the same, and they're complete opposites.
I would say
none of it matches up.
The lights match up. The weather depends on oceans, and Antarctica is high, and so when you're higher in the mountains, it's colder. I think the average height of Antarctica
is highest land on Earth. You're correct there.
Yeah. So that's what makes it colder, not the the other thing. I mean, they all go together to determine the weather. Is what
There's a lot of factors, correct, but nothing matches. The 24-hour sun has been filmed hundreds, thousands of times in the north, in Norway, and in Alaska. It's never been filmed. It's only been faked in the South. And then also, do you know there's a 24-hour moon in the Arctic? Every month for a week, the moon doesn't set for an entire week. It just circles around. And that's because the moon is migrating in between the tropics. When it's over the Tropic of Cancer, it's close enough to the things in the middle of the Arctic area, and it never sets. But you never have a 24-hour moon in the Arctic, in the Antarctic.
Yeah, I haven't heard of the 24-hour moon. I don't know about that.
Yeah, look that up. They don't teach you
Well,
that one in
so
school
part of it
because
is
that
that
one's a
hardly-
globe killer.
Hardly anybody lives above 60. Like on this, if you look at the North Pole, there's a lot of land near the North Pole where that's inhabited.
Right. There's less
near
land,
the
less people
South
in the
Pole,
South. I totally
There's
agree.
hardly anybody there.
You know what Crow's Law is?
What's that?
Crow's Law is anything that's interesting that can be filmed in high def will be filmed in high def. Okay. And it's never been filmed in the South. Right. This is interesting. There are people that go to Antarctica every year. You know, there's 15 different companies that you can book a very expensive trip to Antarctica. They're all owned by the same company. That's weird. And they take you to this little peninsula. They show you some penguins. They show you a ceremonial North Pole, and then they kick you out. And that's it. Okay. You know, no one's allowed to independently explore beyond there, but nobody has filmed the 24-hour sun. Why is that? They faked it, but they haven't filmed it. You know, why are they faking it? Why is NASA faking people floating on the space station? Right? NASA has $65 million a day. They should be doing a better job. But you know, they fake it like this. Look, I'm floating on the space station. Right? This is it. My budget's zero. All right. And people just believe this. It's the humans want to just believe. They want to not feel like they've been deceived, right? Here's a question for you, Matthew. Why don't we
say
see
the same thing about realizing the same people might say that about you? I mean,
why don't we see any land if this is from the space station?
They're over the ocean?
Well, that's what I would say too. But when I saw this, I was like, all right, you know, well, how do you explain that? And the way you explain that is this was filmed in somebody's front yard and they just turned it upside down. Okay. And they put a solar panel over them. I was fooled when I saw this. It just shows how easily we are fooled. That's
Well,
looking up, not down.
I wouldn't disagree with that, but for different reasons.
and look at this. Now let your logical mind think about this. Is that 40,000 pounds of steel falling from the sky? Watch how fast this guy falls, right? Is that 40,000 pounds of steel falling, or is that a balloon?
I haven't seen that video before. That's interesting.
Right.
It's the external fuel tank on the
How is this? So the people that are filming this are going over 17,000 miles an hour. Right. So this thing's now going sideways, 17,000 miles an hour. Watch right around here. There's a piece of paper floating in the air, probably a candy wrapper from one of the helicopters that was filming this. And it just goes by. This will show you that there it goes. Right. This is not falling at thousands of miles an hour. This is a balloon filled with helium. NASA is the largest consumer of helium and owner of all the helium companies in the world. Right. This is a deception. This thing is floating. Okay. I don't know if we're filming upwards or downwards. I think they're filming upwards, but I can't prove it. Doesn't matter because if I flip it upside down, it's still the same thing. It's not falling. 40,000 pounds. It's pretty heavy. It would hurt if it landed on your toe.
I mean, yeah, I believe it. But I don't know if it'd be helpful for me to like try and explain what I think is going on there.
I actually would be helpful. I'm very curious how you could explain that.
It's orbiting and it is
the direction
falling.
of their dialogue here might be more fruitful for.
It's orbiting. That's a word. I mean, how's it orbiting at 40,000 miles an hour? Look how close it is to the clouds. Don't tell me it's away from the clouds. It's very close to the clouds. So it's in the air and it's going faster than the SR-71 could go, which when it goes 3.2, Mach 3.2, it rips apart. right? This thing is not an aerodynamic anything. This is a balloon.
Got it. Yeah, I would have to look at that video more. I'm familiar with it. But
They've
so,
got Dave. Sorry, I was just say Dave has some really cool balloon videos where seen some like rockets collapse that, man, look a lot like some kind of balloon.
Like a lot like they look exactly like balloons.
Yeah. Anyways, we can move on.
Go ahead.
yeah, I
Take
was
the
gonna
conversation
say,
wherever you want.
yeah, the bigger picture thing, like what would you hope would be the end goal of flat earth ideas? Like
What's the goal of my mission? My goal,
yeah, like in the broad evangelical culture regarding flat earth,
Yeah.
should it be taught in Christian universities like mine or in Christian high schools? Or
I think it should be taught everywhere.
So my answer would be that when I was in my 20s, I was a lot like I guess Tim here, and where I didn't believe the Bible because Genesis sounded like a fairy tale, and the idea that the earth could be so different before the flood, just it was too much. It was too much for me. And when you take a look at the Genesis account, day 1 through 6, it's just really hard to line up with the heliocentric Big Bang model. And I'm not saying there aren't other models out there that could attempt to explain, page 1 through 6, or day 1 through 6, but I want to believe day 1 through 6, and I believe the flat Earth model does a much better job of that than the heliocentric model, and for a number of reasons. But I think that it could save a lot of souls like me in my 20s personally, and guys like Dave, and excuse me, Dave, I said Tim. Guys like Tim who had a similar testimony as me. I don't know. I think it's important that, because I think it's truth, I think it's important that all Christians should know this, but I think it's more important for people who are straying from Christianity, who are turned off by Christianity because they think it's a fairy tale, because they can't believe that Noah got all the animals that he needed to on the boat, because they think that it talks about a God who doesn't exist. And that's why I think it's important. And I would love to see at least maybe some classes at a Christian university that maybe give the flat earth perspective, give the biblical flat earth perspective. Now, I'm not saying that condescendingly, like if you read the Bible, this is how you should read it. I'm just saying that give the perspective that the people that do believe this, that do also have a lot of their beliefs grounded in the Bible, this is why they think that. I think it would be a tremendous opportunity to show an alternative argument. And yeah,
just to add on to that, I never lead with the flat earth, with the Bible. Matt takes care of that for me. He's on the Bible side of the fence. I agree with everything Matt has shown me, but I don't think that you need the Bible to show someone that the earth is flat. Science proves it, not scientism. Science proves that we don't live on a spinning ball. And then once you've eliminated that, should it be taught in Christian schools? It should be taught in every school. And anybody teaching heliocentrism should be arrested.
Tim.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I would say, if you're looking for places where the Bible disagrees with science, you don't have to look farther than the resurrection of Jesus. Science says that people don't rise from the dead.
Sure.
And the key non-controvertible thing in the Bible that
exactly what I'm talking about.
Science is that. And then lots of other things. But I would say all truth is God's truth. And so using science and using our senses and our God-given reason are legitimate ways to find out about the world around us.
Absolutely. And heliocentrism makes you check your common sense at the door and give it up for nonsense.
The one thing that really attracts me to Dave's work, like you're doing your experiments in your kitchen, you're going out, you're using the cameras, and like he says, it doesn't prove the flat earth, but it coincides, it supports the flat Earth model, whereas what I'm seeing is there are no scientific, and I think we all believe in science as the term, and it's good to define what science is. But science, I don't see it supporting the globe model, and I looked.
So this what I'm showing right here, this is actual science in my kitchen. I haven't seen any science from Neil deGrasse or Bill Nye or Lying Box. None of them have they use science. They just use words and nonsense and straw man arguments. You know, they won't talk to us because they say the science is settled. Well, Matthew, you know, science is never settled. Science is just waiting for new data to contradict what people may believe.
Yeah, and I think the most frustrating side is they continually use arguments of things that we don't believe in, right?
Yeah.
Like a flat Earth floating in a solar system amongst other round planets. Like that's the classic see flat earthers are stupid type thing, you know, the meme with the flat Earth amongst the other planets. And that's the tough part is there's
that's
no
just
real
them being lazy, not looking into what flat earthers believe.
Sure, I would agree.
Gaslighting us on purpose.
Yeah, it's a straw man argument. I believe in the steel man argument. You should represent somebody else's view as fairly and as strongly as possible, so that if you disagree, you can explain why you disagree with that.
Well, that's good. That's productive, but that's not what we get from the zealots that are, that are protecting the globe. Either they're suffering from Stockholm syndrome or they've sold their souls and they're here on a mission.
And also from people who advocate methodological naturalism over intelligent design. They don't even represent what intelligent design claims very well. So.
Correct.
Yeah, that's important.
So Matthew, I know my highest respect to you because you are a globe believer. Remember the Facebook group that we were in?
Nathan Thompson, I met him once or twice. He's been here on the West Coast.
Yeah, so there was 160,000 members and they canceled it. Why? In a true scientific forum, all ideas are welcome and you just have to disprove them. And I think you were there, and I highly respect that you were there to give your side of the argument,
and to learn what everybody was saying. Yeah.
So why would that be suppressed? They just canceled the group. I mean, I remember going to look. I was talking with someone, and I wanted some biblical proof, and I knew that forum had that. And I was going to put that out, and I was like, it's gone. Where did it go? It just got deleted. And that's happening. Yeah. That's happening across the board on YouTube. These ideas are being squashed.
Yeah, so Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of these places have been recently come under criticism for allowing echo chambers of different ideas that some people consider harmful, terrorist groups, that type of stuff, or even conspiracy theories they consider harmful. And so they decided to take down and actively suppress flat Earth stuff, QAnon stuff, terrorist stuff, obviously.
Matthew, do you think flat Earth sites like Nathan's are dangerous?
No, I think that it's better to have an open dialogue. So I disagree with that kind of radical.
Can I'm not trying to put you on a spot or anything. You're on the globe side of the fence. What would be your number one reason you think the Earth is a globe, if you had to give one? Do you have one?
Oh, I would say eyewitness testimony and pictures.
Eyewitness testimony and pictures of the Earth?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen any pictures of the Earth?
I've seen pictures taken from satellites and sent.
Well, have you ever seen a satellite? I mean, these are the most two famous pictures of the Earth. Here's the blue marble, which Robert Simmons, a NASA visual artist, admits that he made it all from data. He made it in Photoshop because it has to be. You quoted that at the beginning of the show. And then we show this one, which is the United States. I know we're getting fat, but this is ridiculous, right?
Oh, you mean because there's different sizes?
Yeah, look at the size of the United States. Now, someone could say this is an angular thing and it's a close up and you're not seeing the edge of the Earth. But here's something that we can check. We can verify the length this is. We can drive across Mexico. We can take a boat at a certain miles per hour across the bay and not using GPS, which is NASA, and we can measure and know scientifically provably this is 934 miles. Well, NASA tells us the Earth is 7,917 miles in diameter, which is a straight line. Okay. I should be able to fit 8.5 of these segments in between these two lines. And as you can see, we don't even come close to that. Right. So this is your best proof of the globe, a picture that is scientifically provably fake.
Yeah, that's a good example that you have there, because it shows that if that's what you think as proof, I think it's basically just photography. So for example, look how big Africa looks if I put this close to there.
But I
Look
can't
how,
see the whole thing. This
I
is
know.
this
See-
is
see
showing
how-
you the
see how
diameter of the
Africa-
Earth.
Look, Africa takes up like what, a third of the distance on the equator, right? But now if you put it far away, now it takes up less. See that?
No, it doesn't. It
Like
takes
a
up the
quarter.
same amount.
So you can see as it goes farther away, then you zoom in, it takes up less. I mean,
so you're saying if I zoomed out, this would get 3 times wider than it is right now. Magically. So
no, if you move it farther away and zoom in.
you believe this, that this land is what's showing on this, and the rest of this land is on the other side of that globe. That's what you believe.
That's right. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what Matthew is saying as far as the zoom in, zoom out, and I do agree that what am I trying to say? The location of the observer is important when looking at the size of continents on a ball, but that, taking those pictures, NASA admits that they splice them together with the strips of quote unquote satellite data, close satellites. They have to essentially build it. So I get what Matthew is saying, but I think it's hard to have that argument on there, knowing that it's not an actual, it wasn't necessarily created from one camera.
So Matthew, this is created from one camera. This is Jupiter, a gaseous planet where this storm is bigger than the Earth, and we can see the clouds going in all different directions. And this is from NASA. This is better than a photo. This is an actual video of Earth. But then if you look at the most famous, what's that?
Video of Jupiter.
Of Jupiter. Sorry. And so if you look at the most famous picture from 2014, in 2016, NASA goes, hey, we got a picture of proving that there's a magnetic center. We have a picture of the Northern Lights. Right now, I could say this is Photoshop, but let's just pretend it's real. How did none of the clouds change? Every single cloud is exactly the same. Every tiny dot is here. This is obviously the same picture, just darkened a little bit, right? So this shows you that NASA is lying about photos from space. This is undeniable proof that they're lying. The best argument that the Globers have is, well, they got a picture of the aurora and they superimposed it on the old picture just to make it look nice. And if that's good for you, I don't know if there's really anything that wouldn't be good. And if you just Google the latest picture of Pluto, somehow they got a full Pluto, amazing, as this thing's whizzing by at 60,000 miles an hour or faster. And there's a desert that looks like Pluto the dog. Is that my imagination?
You can draw lots of different shapes on there, but yeah, it does look like Pluto the dog.
Yeah, and they were both created and discovered in the same year. Fascinating. But so your best evidence for the globe is testimony from known liars and photos that they even admit are not photos. I mean, we have Don Pettit, the astronaut who has the lowest intelligence. He's doing a demonstration where he's drinking coffee from a plastic cup, showing how it sticks to the cup. Right, he just finished it there, and then he's floating it, to show you he's in space. But watch what happens to the coffee; it gets out of sync because the coffee is CGI. Right, so he is floating. This is all fake. right? Whether he's on a 0G plane or this is just all fake, the coffee comes out of sink. There's no excuse for that other than this is green screen trickery. This is Chris Hadfield. He's singing. These guys aren't even in the same room. Watch his microphone, right? He misplaces where Chris is supposed to be, and he sticks the microphone into his neck. Okay. These are known liars, deceivers, faking space. The microphone is inside of his neck, and he's able to sing with the microphone in his neck. I can barely talk without a microphone on my neck. All right. We catch them again and again and again. Watch this thing. Look, this guy's head is see-through. Okay. Because there's no left-hand turns or right-hand turns on a 0G plane. This is on a 0G plane. Right. And they had to fade him in. They do this all the time, and you can just make excuse after excuse. Well, they edited it to make it look nicer. You know, you can make all sorts of excuses, right? These guys were flipping their things around, you know, flipping a hat around, flipping the microphone around, and in the background, this guy floats by way, way far away. I zoomed in on it, and you can see the harness and the wires that he's hanging from. Why are they faking space? And the best argument the NASA apologists have is, well, they wear harnesses to make sure that they're safe. What? That makes no sense whatsoever. This guy's hanging from a harness. Okay. They're faking space. There's times where they do their flips, they get caught in their wires. They get tangled in the wires, and another astronaut will pull out a ball and start spinning it on his finger. Look at the ball. Don't look over there because you can see the wires. It's unreal the amount of fakery that they do up there.
My big question to add on to that, why would there be any need? Why don't you just roll a camera?
Watch this. He passed the hat. He passed the hat, and he thought he had the hat in his hands, but he didn't.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah. All right, go ahead. Sorry. I can't rewind it. So go ahead. What was your question?
Oh, just my question in general. And I think you already have an answer, Dave, but why would they need to fake anything if like all you have to do is roll a camera and do amazing? I mean, if you were in space in the International Space Station, first of all, why isn't there footage of it being built? Yeah. That's like one of the most incredible feats that humans have done, if it's true. But yet there's no evidence of it being built.
Where would they put the camera?
Well, mission control, there's cameras on spacewalks all the time. Mission control would have to control, you know, like where everything is. It would be the most filmed event ever. And there's zero footage of it being filmed. Zero.
Yeah, you're right. I have no answers for any of those.
Yeah. So at some point, you have to look at the preponderance of evidence. This is the proof that the International Space Station exists, by the way. They never built it on Earth. They never tested it. They never have to fix any of the seals in between the sections. Although on a submarine, there's a crew down there all the time, constantly fixing seals. And it's interesting that all of the key and mechanical equipment on the space station is on the outside, just like a submarine, or not. Okay. This is insanity that people believe this. And supposedly, you know, when you're in the sun and not in the sun, there's a 500-degree swing in temperature. How does any of this stuff survive a swing of temperature that far? And these solar panels, what's that?
Engineering.
That's a word. Say physics and science, and then it's even more believable.
Yeah.
Those are just words. There's no science behind the word science. Science is real. The word science is just a word. You have to show science. If there's engineering, they would have tested this on Earth. They would have tested it in a swimming pool. Matter of fact, they do test it in a swimming pool. They do all of their training in the National Buoyancy Lab, where the astronauts are underwater with scuba divers moving them around and you know, faking space. And the underwater, they have green screens. Why do they have green screens in a swimming pool? And the answer that NASA gave is, well, to make it look more realistic for the astronauts. Well, that's not how a green screen works. Okay. It's, you know, when you start to look at this stuff, you can't deny it. Excuse me.
Yeah, I can see that you have lots of questions and that there's lots of skepticism in NASA and those videos, and that makes sense. I don't have any answers to any of those.
What about Werner von Braun, the supposed Nazi scientist that came over?
Oh, the head of, he worked with NASA. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky shows his handiwork.
Yeah, why did he do that? What is that about?
Because the sky shows the handiwork of God and shows his glory for creating the universe.
So the word sky, if you go back to the Hebrew, and Matt, I'm sure you could elaborate on this, but the original Hebrew actually implies a structure. And it's interesting you use the word sky. The King James Version does use the word firmament, which also implies a actual physical structure.
But the word firmament isn't etymologically related to firm, is it? Doesn't mean that it's firm.
I'm going back to Hebrew rakia, and I've studied a lot. Rob Skiba's work. I haven't studied. I've saw his studies. I'm also Dr. Heiser, who he believes in a globe like you do, but he acknowledges that the Hebrews did not. So the writers, they use the word rakia because they assumed that there was a physical structure above, as did all ancient cultures across just throughout history.
They also assumed the sun went under the earth at night.
Some did, yeah. And some of them actually believed that they were on a turtle. There's other cultures that were on a crocodile.
Can't rule it out.
Yeah, I've learned my journey down this flat earth road has taught me that I don't know. I spent 20 years teaching, and I'm 50 now. I'm going to spend the next 20 learning. I got a lot to learn.
Matthew, go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead, Matt.
Well, yeah, sure. I was just going to say there are different interpretations of that word firmament, and I think those different interpretations come from trying to work, kind of our more modern view of what our cosmology is. That's where I think some of that comes from. I believe that the word rakia, I believe the ancient, etymology behind it is the fact that, it was a word that maybe was derived from this notion of beating out metal, kind of forming something with metal. And then I think a lot of, chapter 4 of my book that you read, you got your answers in Genesis guys that have their long explanation of why, this doesn't mean something firm. But I think a lot of the imagery that's thrown along with it there about the sky being strong and solid, I think backs up kind of the etymology behind the word, that I do believe it means something firm. Now, sometimes it's translated as expanse or sky or heaven. And, I think all those are kind of arbitrary. You could kind of go one way or the other. I think for flat earthers, it's nice, though even the word firmament sounds good for us, right? Because it sounds firm, right? And that it's something, that you could knock on. So I personally like the word in English. I think if we're wrong about the interpretation of it, I think, man, it really stinks that they called it a firmament, because it was kind of misleading a little bit, in my opinion. But so I think just like, you could find different interpretations of or explanations of the fossil, I think you could find the same thing for the word firmament as well.
So Psalm 112:6 says, the righteous will never be moved. He will be remembered forever. So I would interpret that as saying it's not literal. Righteous people aren't stuck to one spot in the earth. It's meaning to be something more figurative. And I would say that the other verses might have the same meaning as that one.
I think that's a totally logical way to interpret that and to interpret the rest of them. But I simply interpret them differently in some situations. I think I could use words like something, colloquialisms of today and not mean them literally. I think that happens in the Bible. I don't think everything's literal. I think the way I interpret some of those creation verses, I take more literally, because I think it's God speaking in a more literal fashion. Now, you know, when Jesus says, "Let me tell you a parable," I know he's definitely giving a parable. And when, you know, when you use words like, you know, something is like something, I think you're definitely using imagery. So that's the crux. You know, it's tough. You know, there, for every piece of evidence or for every verse, both sides have their argument for it, and it's a challenging subject, which why I think it's such an interesting subject. Every time Dave goes on someone's show, it's their highest watched show, because people can't believe there's still flat earthers out there, but
I can't believe there's still ball earthers out there.
Right. So, you know, it's tough. And I think the toughness comes from the fact that it's so, like we said, observational. There's just a lot of stuff we have to look at and kind of choose a path. And the things that we mount on our side that ultimately choose that path for us are the things that are important to us, you know, and it probably speaks about our inner person and why certain things speak to us and others don't.
Yeah, that's really helpful to know. I mean, this has been a fascinating discussion.
Matthew, I have a question I'd like to ask.
Yeah,
I'd like to ask to hear the heliocentric belief explanation.
Okay.
So, you know, in the heliocentric world, we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, orbiting at 66,000 miles an hour, corkscrewing through the universe at 500,000 miles an hour, and moving sideways at, you know, 1.3 million miles per hour. So the question is, are you familiar with the Georgia Guidestones?
Yes, it's kind of like the Stonehenge, except in Georgia.
So in the center stone, there's a long, thin hole about 1/4 inch wide, and if you look through it, the North Star is there, right? And it's been up for over 40 years. The North Star is there, and if you do a little time lapse, you'll see that, you know, all the stars are circling around it. Since we're corkscrewing through the universe, traveling trillions of miles, since it was built, how the heck is the North Star still through that hole? Now, in a flat Earth cosmology where the stars are fixed inside the firmament, spinning around a central axis point, it makes perfect sense. In a heliocentric model, I can't imagine it staying in there for 5 minutes.
In the heliocentric model, the answer is that star is more than 300 light years away, and the other motions are negligible. And there is a small movement. If you look up on Wikipedia, Polaris, it talks about the star, and it has something about the speed of the star in the sky. It's very small.
So they tell us, you know, 40,000 years ago we had a different North Star, and in 40,000 years we'll have another one. But we just happen to live in the time where the North Star hasn't moved, and it's staying right there, and the pyramids and everything that was built years ago that's lined up with it still lines up with it. And
it's not exactly in the north, by the way. It's not quite the celestial north.
It does. All the stars rotate around it, and they
rotate around the spot right near the North Star.
Well, the North Star stays right there. It hasn't moved.
No, it goes around the center spot.
So maybe it has a tiny little bit of movement. That's fine, but it hasn't moved. It's still maintaining the same space that it's always maintained. And the program Stellarium, or the star program Stellarium, we used to be able to go 5,000-10,000 years into the future and in the past, and the North Star never moves. And then we started doing some live streams about, hey, how come the North Star isn't moving when we're going these massive amounts of years? And the next day they changed it, and you can only go like 500 years into the future, right? They changed it. You no longer can do that because it reset every year all the way into the future. Why did they do that? If it's moving, why don't they tell us it's moving, right? But to saying that the star is so far away that us traveling trillions of miles doesn't make a difference, that is a unsupported, unrealistic belief.
The mathematics works out in the globe model, the angles and distances.
No, the mathematics doesn't work out, because as I pointed out, if the sun was 8 times farther than it is, it would be unviewable. Well, Polaris is Polaris. They say Polaris, you know, the latest is they say it's 46 times bigger than the star. So since 8 times the sun unviewable at 8 times the distance, which is a light hour. So to make that equivalent to Polaris, it would have to be like 46 times away, so that's 48 hours. It's not even 48 hours. Just say if Polaris was 2 light hours away or 2 light days away, but it's not. It's 433 light years away. It is scientifically, mathematically provable, unseeable, and that's not even factoring in the inverse square law of light, which would make it also unviewable. Nobody wants to do these calculations. Nobody wants to think about it. But having Polaris at that size and that distance is, if Polaris was a light day away, it wouldn't be viewable. It's 433 light years away. Okay, unviewable.
I hear what you're saying. I disagree with that, but I hear what you're saying, and I don't have the. I don't think I could explain it in a way that would make sense, that would convince you.
Okay.
Obviously. Before we finish, Matt, you did mention, we never talked about, you did mention you saw my video about the moon. Did you think about what your solution to that problem would be, or that question?
Well, you kind of bring up some alternative views, like that maybe the moon isn't a physical object, or possibly a projection, or something like that. And I would say that I don't have an if what you present is correct, which I assume it is, I assume you did your research. Then I think it's explained very well by the globe. But I also think that I think just like the sun, I think the location of the moon and the orientation of the moon is highly dependent on the observer. And the fact that I don't think the moon is a physical object kind of makes it tough for us to kind of talk about it in the same, like comparing apples to apples, I guess. No, I don't have an explanation. No, I don't have a comeback for the video you made. I think it was really well done, and I think you did a good job of saying, of remaining fairly neutral, but still giving your position on it. I thought it was a really well done video.
Thank you.
But I do think, in my opinion, the moon is not a physical object, and that optics, just like we talked about earlier with objects in the southern hemisphere, optics of things in the sky could play a large part. I also thought it was interesting that you brought up in that video that we don't see very much atmospheric lensing with stars.
That's right.
I thought that was an interesting argument as well.
Yeah, because the moon appears the same size from everywhere on Earth in one night, but lensing can't be happening because it's not happening in the stars behind the moon.
Well, that's an assumption there, that the stars are behind the moon. We've sent up balloons in Arizona with high-def cameras pointing up. We could see all the stars before it even took off. And you'd figure 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet, it's just going to get clearer and clearer and brighter and brighter. But by the time we hit 50, 60,000 feet, all the stars were gone. All of them were gone. Yes. Figure that one out.
I don't
know. So the stars that we see, the way we see them, they could be projected, and when you pass that level of projection, you no longer see them, right? So saying that the stars are behind the moon is an assumption in a heliocentric world belief.
Saying the sun is always behind every cloud is also an assumption, right?
No, I've seen the sun in between the clouds.
I think that might be an optical illusion. But.
Well, you think that, but and again, if more than 3 or more people try to triangulate the position of the sun, the numbers get farther and farther off. So it's not acting like a physical object. It's more like a reflection. So if 3 of us were standing 100 yards apart in a straight line and we're looking at a giant mirror and the sun was setting behind us, we have a 4th person go up to the mirror and I say, I see the sun right there, and they draw a circle on the mirror. Then they walk 100 yards over to the next person. That circle that they're going to see is on another spot on the mirror, and the next one is on another spot. So all 3 of us will be trying to triangulate 3 different things, and the calculation would just go off wacky. Now, versus if we were all looking at a tree, we could triangulate the exact position of that tree because it's a physical object. The sun that we see is in an apparent position with us, from each viewer.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think to kind of round that up biblically, the notion that light was created on day one, and then we had 3 days of morning and evening before the sun was created on day 4 is really interesting to me from like a theoretical perspective. Like, how does that work? And then, it's, to me, it's kind of an interesting progression, because he creates light, then he creates the firmament, then he creates plants and things which create atmosphere and magnification and things, then he creates the sun. And so it's almost like he needed all those things in place before the sun was created. So to me, biblically, it kind of speaks of something similar to that, maybe a light entering from outside this place, Jesus being the light of the world, and then the firmament focusing it into a single focal point, like you can see behind Dave there. And to me, when you look at the sun, and especially when you can catch it maybe behind the clouds, where you can kind of look at it, or on a hazy day, it just doesn't look like a flaming fireball. Now that's not me with my telescope. That's not me with anything. That's just me experiencing life as a human down here with very little instrumentation. So I think biblically, I think experientially, I think, you can all remember as a little kid driving, because things are closer to you, you got that parallax with the trees going by, but the sun seems to be just following you, and I think that there is something, I'm not saying it's that simple, but I think there is something really interesting about the sun, and how, I'm here in Mexico and I'm looking across the bay, and when the sun rises above the mountain, right where the sun's at, that part of the mountain is really lit up, but it's not actually lit up in real life. Like, if I went and stood on that mountain, it's not beaming with light. It's just because I'm standing at this perspective. If I was to go 50 miles to the east or west, I would see a different part of that mountain lit up. Just like if I was below the moon and it's a little bit behind the clouds, those clouds look lit up right there. Well, those clouds aren't really lit up. It's because I'm viewing the moon through those clouds. And so I think optics play a big part. And I know it's not a great answer of, I don't believe your video because of optics, just like I could say science or something like that. It's tough. I believe in the fullness of time, these things will be revealed, whether it's before Jesus comes back or after. I think probably after, but I can't wait to find out can't wait to find everything out. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that I will agree with that the fullness of time, truth will be made known, and we'll all know it at some point. So yeah, we can agree on that.
Mm-hmm. In the meantime, we'll be simply men trying to figure out the things of God, which may be possible, maybe not possible.
Well, we're out of time. I don't want to keep you guys longer than what we agreed on. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything that anybody feels like they had to get out before we finish?
I'm good.
Nope.
But yeah, thanks so much for this. I think it's helpful to have constructive conversations, and this has been very informative to me and interesting to hear what you guys say. Tim, go ahead. It sounds like you might say something.
Just want to say thank you to all of you. I think every voice here was integral. I know our unnamed friend, he put a lot of his ideas in the chat bar, but thank you all. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. And thank you, unnamed one.
Okay, well, I'll say goodbye.
All right, guys, thanks.
We can do something again sometime. All right, talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks.